Hi, Tom.
Hello there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
And did you figure out how to turn
Stop the recording?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Good. Great. If you don't mind, I'll just
Keep eating.
finish some of my supper.
I hope it's good.
Well,
Hello, Pat.
something very seasonal.
Oh, very good. Hi,
I made-
Katie.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
How you doing, Katie?
Good, how are you?
Good. I told Tom I'm still finishing my supper. Kind of an
That's okay.
awkward time, a 6:30 meeting.
I just finished mine.
I'm going to mute so you don't hear the puppy dog of my daughter.
Hello, Ed.
Although
Good
Ed would
evening,
come-
all.
Ed
How
would
are
be
you doing?
fine. You have a very obedient, non-barking puppy dog.
Yeah, I have a
I-
dog. Go ahead, Ed.
I've got two of them around here that they may break into harmony soon. So if they see somebody walking past the window.
Yeah, mine goes from 0 to 100. What is it? Was it as beautiful in Ithaca as it was today in Rochester?
Yes. Very nice. Hello, Robin.
I had my volume turned down. I didn't hear anything and then I realized it. So hello.
How was your trip down south?
It was amazing. I saw many, many birds in Ecuador.
Cool.
Lots of lifers, as the birders say.
Oh, yeah.
wow. Good for you. Was that your first trip?
First time in Ecuador, yeah.
Mhm. Did you do the Galapagos or was it elsewhere?
No, we went around southern Ecuador into the Andes, and then we did go to an island that had blue-footed boobies, but it wasn't at the Galapagos is too far away for that trip. So it's called Isla de la Plata, Silver Island is where we went. But yeah, it was very, very fun, very tiring to be birding all day, every day. But very restorative. Good to get a different perspective on the world.
Yeah. Was it with a lab of oat or just you and your?
The Cuba Bird Club.
Hmm.
Talk about conservation issues. Ecuador has a lot of them. They need someone on their conservation committee
Wow.
if they have one.
Well, it's 6:32. I guess we can start. Looks like we got a good turnout tonight. Andrew couldn't make it. Is that right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Pat, we're going to go in executive session, but that's sort of at the end. So I don't know if you want to stick around for all the beginning stuff or not.
You tell me, how long is it gonna be?
So when do you think we'll get to the executive session? In an hour?
I'm guessing it could be an hour. Yeah. Do you want to sort of at least dim out for 40 minutes or so?
Yeah, that's fine. I'll just keep checking back.
Great.
Okay,
Okay,
sounds good.
thank you.
Great. Okay, well, let's call the meeting to order here. Thanks everybody for showing up. So first topic is Open Space Index work session.
Hey, I think that's my cue.
That's your cue.
Okay, so we are gearing up for our pop-up event in September at the carnival, and it's all systems go. So I'm just I put just a few quick slides together. So I think the bulk of what I wanted to address today was just the logistics of the event. And then also we've drafted a preliminary survey that we want to get your first initial impressions on today. And then, you know, we can send this out after tonight. And, you know, if you have initial thoughts after tonight, feel free to send them to us. And then the idea is that we'll get that online at least a few days before the 24th so that we can have that up and ready to go for that pop-up event. So we are anticipating being there for 2 to 3 hours. I actually reached out to the carnival organizers asking what the best time, like the best bang for our buck would be, Jen and I to be there. And they mentioned that there's actually like free admission or a reduced admission around 2 p.m. and suggested that we actually get there at noon to set up. It starts at 1, and then maybe we can be there from when it opens till 3, 4 o'clock. That being said, if people have other, you know, if people think there's a better strategy, we're certainly open to that. I think the only concern is that obviously John and I will have the actual tent that will be under, as well as the presentation materials. So it probably makes sense for us to be at the front end of things. And then I'm hoping that maybe a few of you would be willing or interested to take an hour or two to staff that booth later into the day. But just want to get your thoughts on how that sounds and if that makes sense from your perspective.
Katie,
So
I think that
you
makes-
said something about admission. I didn't know there was any admission for the carnival.
Yeah, they mentioned that, yeah, 2 p.m. is like a reduced, either reduced or free. I can't remember what she told me. Maybe from 2 to 3. So they expect like an influx of people at that time.
I also know it tends to clear out so that people can line up for the parade. And I think that lineup is at 5.
Okay.
So it would make sense to capitalize on the 2 to 5 timeframe.
Okay.
Or for you, I guess noon, depending on how you're set up.
So I think, yeah, we would get there at noon to set up and then it starts at 1 and then we could stay till probably 4-ish. And then I don't know if someone can cover that extra hour. I think ideally we'd have like at least a little bit of overlap with whoever is going to take over after that, if there's anyone willing to do that, just so that we can kind of show them what we're presenting and how to kind of manage it. So.
Yeah, I can be there from anywhere from noon to 5. 5 o'clock is probably deadline
Okay.
because I've got a 6 o'clock appointment elsewhere. So whatever makes sense within that time frame, I certainly have that afternoon left open.
Okay, great. So maybe at like 3-ish, if you could
Sure.
show up,
Not a problem.
and then we can
Do
kind of
you,
overlap a little bit.
do you anticipate that you would leave and whoever's still there would have to take down the tent and
That is a
Put it
good
somewhere.
question, Robin. And I didn't even think about that. Yeah, let me get back to you on that. Yeah, because we're gonna have a decent amount of materials between the tent itself and then the boards, obviously, that we're gonna wanna
and the
collect that
banner, there
input.
should be a banner and various items that need to be stored somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, let me think on that / ask John and get back to you on that. But that is a good thought.
I can help. I'm willing to help. I just don't know if, if that is something that I can do, is take that thing down and put it on my car.
Sure. No, that's really fair.
And
Yeah,
maybe
maybe
I only
we'll,
need one person.
they're staying longer just so that we can grab those materials, because otherwise it might be a little bit of a challenge for us to drive back down and grab those later on, even if someone else were to pack it down. So, but I think at the very least, it makes sense for us to be there at the initial onset, and then whether, we come back later and collect the materials for budget's sake, or I'm not, yeah. Let me coordinate with John and I can get back to you on that.
And is anybody at all interested in doing the parade? Because it's been mentioned to me, a certain amount of emphasis that that's where we get the greatest visibility, especially if we have a banner and can just walk from the beginning to the end, which is it's a pretty short parade in terms of distance. I don't know how slowly it's going to be moving, but
I would normally say yeah, but I'm out of town from mid-afternoon on that day.
I'm out of, I have the same problem. I'm gone all that whole weekend.
too.
I'm available to be in the booth if Ed needs help. As far as the parade, like I just think the kind of engagement that we want to have with people is going to be better in the tent where we can talk to them. Walking down the street, I don't know, we're not going to get our message across about taking the survey or giving us feedback.
Yeah, I think the idea was not necessarily to focus on the survey, but to just have a banner that says Conservation Advisory Council, keeping Lansing beautiful, just getting the idea of the CAC in front of the public, but not attempting to get them to do the survey or anything. I think that was our thinking.
Looks like John's trying to speak to us, but can't, based on the chat.
Oh, so
John,
I think that means that John is willing to volunteer for everything. Is that what he's saying? Can't say no, right?
better
can
type
object.
fast.
Is the town itself anticipating being in the parade in some other capacity?
Could you repeat that question?
I'm just wondering
Okay.
if the town of Lansing is gonna be participating in the parade in some other fashion, because maybe we could piggyback off of, we could have someone carry the banner as part of the town staff or an elected official. I mean, I know that there's implications along with that, but
Rats, we had Pat sign off, but he might actually know the answer to that question.
okay.
I'm
Well, I
not
can
sure.
touch base with CJ on that.
Okay, that'd be great.
Okay. I know we talked a little bit about promotion of the pop-up. I mean, I will say that typically, like the purpose of the pop-up, it is informal and it's kind of meant to catch people who are doing something else. So I don't think that the promotion will be nearly as robust as what we'll need to do for like the public meeting or the survey itself. But if there's any way we can get the word out through social media channels, I think we had talked a little bit about the school district, social media, and, just saying, just a quick post, hey, the CAC is planning on being at the Lansing Carnival to talk about the open space index and conservation plan. I don't know if there's been any movement on that. And I will say that we will put together a flyer promoting the survey, which we'll obviously have at the event itself, but we can also use prior to the event. So that could be posted in town hall, the library, other community facilities, local businesses, that type of thing.
So Katie, do you need us as a CAC to make sure that the flyer gets out somehow at local businesses and things?
I mean, I think the way that John and I were thinking about this was like the pop-up is the first opportunity to start getting the word out about the survey. And then following that, we'll start really promoting the survey. Basically between the pop-up and when we have our first public meeting in the fall. So I don't think we have to worry too much about like a really robust promotion strategy for the pop-up event itself, but I know we had talked about just promoting the survey in and of itself, as well as the public meeting. We talked about doing mailers. I think that's a conversation for like a later meeting. But I just wanted to put it on your radar if there's.
I could talk to Susan Tabrisi on the school board and see if there's a way of promoting it through the school.
We
Yeah,
can
that would be great,
certainly-
just because.
We can certainly promote it through the various local listservs and really emphasize to people that they should feel free to forward it to their networks within Lansing. And I think that'll go a long way.
Mhm. And should we have posters or something like that up, let's say at the Lansing Market and at Marabato, Rogues Harbor, Salt Point?
For the survey?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I think so, for sure. So I think that flyer will function as both a flyer as well as like something that could be posted on a community board or what have you.
and so this would briefly explain it in a very short paragraph and then have a link that they can go to.
Yeah, so it'll be like really graphic poster, like just a few words, the town of Lansing is undertaking this planning process. We want your input. Here's a QR code and a web link. And then I think we also talked about having printed surveys either mailed or available at certain community locations for people who might not be comfortable doing it online.
People who, if for any reason don't have internet access or don't feel comfortable with it, are you, can you possibly set up a phone line, or is there a spare phone line that we could use at the town offices where people could call in and request something mailed to them?
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk to the town.
It seems that, calling the planning department and then they could direct them to, or get their mailing address and send them a hard copy survey.
Well, either that or, to have something, that goes to voicemail. If we set up a voicemail box through a Google Voice account, then it could just collect those.
Call from Union, then Y.
Oh, what's that? Is that me?
Call from Union, then Y.
I don't know what that was. It's weird. But if you do have Google Voice, you can set up those calls to forward to voicemail, and then we wouldn't be limited by the hours of somebody picking up the phone at town hall.
Let me coordinate with CJ on that. Maybe that's an option.
Yeah, I'm sorry, CJ couldn't make the meeting tonight.
I have a question just about the communication strategy. So I'm kind of wondering, so I haven't seen anything yet of, a handout or brochure, but what
Take that phone right out of here.
what kind of wording are you using to motivate people to even respond to the survey? Why would they, it seems like, that you need to briefly explain what it is. I assume you're not going to use the phrase open space index, which would be meaningless to pretty much everybody. or else you'd have to define it. And then, you know, people get stuff, you know, thrown at them like this all the time. And
Sure.
I just don't know how you're, yeah. So what's the strategy to kind of motivate them to respond? It's, you know, this, if you emphasize, you know, this could affect planning, then that brings up, you know, I can think of a lot of frequently asked questions we might get, like, how will this affect my taxes? And, you know, all of that stuff. So, but people would probably want to know, you know, who is, you know, we didn't have something like this already. What is it? Who's going to use it? And how will it be used? And, you know, what's in it for me? I don't know. So what are you guys doing about that? Not just that communication stuff. Is
Yeah, I mean, I
something
think,
on the handout that they or something, if they just get a survey and say, please respond to this planning survey, I just don't, well, maybe, I don't know, maybe you guys have had experience and a lot of people respond to that kind of thing, but I don't know.
well, first I'll say that, you know, the poster will have a very short blip about, you know, why this is important for your community, what the impacts may be moving
Okay,
forward, and, you know, very clear and non-jargony terms. And then there'll be a
Okay.
little bit of an introductory paragraph at the beginning of it, kind of further detailing what the purpose of the survey is, why we're asking for people's input, and how it might influence the results of this planning process.
okay, so that's on the
Um,
poster. Okay,
Yeah, and I mean, personally, the way I like to develop posters, they're very text limited. They're
Yeah.
just, you know, easily digestible, attractive, and giving you just the core information. And then if you want to dive in a little bit further, you click the link or you scan the QR code, and then you get a little more information before you actually want to participate in the survey itself. In terms of enticing people, we also had talked about doing a raffle. If you participate in the survey, basically you're entered in for a chance to win a gift card to a local nursery.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I think that will help. And it's actually, we've found that even just like a $25 gift card or a $20 gift card is pretty enticing for people to participate. So that was something that we had talked about a few weeks ago.
Ed
But
Ed and I connected about that also, just the idea that, you know, maybe David Fernandez would be willing to donate something like that, given the, you know, newness of the different businesses he has going in Lansing, and the length of time he's already been going. So if the CAC thinks this is a good idea, maybe we could actually get kind of started on that.
I think it would be good for, you know, like for me and probably all of us, if we had, you know, something, maybe more than what we would hand out to people, but to give us all the same talking points. So, for example, if someone were to come up to me now and say, what's the open space index? Well, I've looked, you know, pretty carefully at one example we were looking at from another community, and but, you know, I could ramble on for probably 5 minutes, and, you know, what's the 2 to 3 sentence, you know, so I assume, you know, you've worked that over, but it'd be good if I had that. What do I say if somebody says, what's it going to do to my taxes? What's a good answer to that question? You know, I think it'd be good for us to have, for me, what I'm thinking of is thinking of what the frequently asked questions are likely to be if I were to talk to my neighbors and friends and people in the community, and then have answers for that. And if we all had the same thing, because if I explain the open space index in a very different way than someone from your team does, you know, this is going to confuse people. So I think we should all be speaking the same language on some of the core points, which I think is, you know, what is an open space index? Who's going to use it? What's it, you know, what's it going to mean to our community? What about my own property and taxes? Those are things I think people are going to ask about.
Another point, David, which, and I don't know if Katie, you and John use this argument, but the data have shown for in the land protection sphere, which I know from working at the Finger Lakes Land Trust, that oftentimes taxes increase because of the related infrastructure that results from developing land as opposed to leaving land open and undeveloped. And that's an equation that has actually proven itself to be one of the more compelling local justifications for not developing large swaths of land.
Mm.
And I think that those numbers were run in particular for the Bell Station property, that developing the infrastructure would have been greater than what the tax gains would have been, according to the land trust.
So Katie, would you be able to send the CAC some bullet points along the lines of what David has been asking about, and maybe some examples of the posters that other communities have used? Because I'm thinking the hooks that they use might be helpful for our own banner.
Sure.
We're, kind of getting to that point where if we're going to have a banner, it needs to be a little bit more catchy than what I've drafted, and maybe we can pick up some ideas from these other communities.
Yeah, and Carrie, to that end, I also, if I'm willing to put together a quick draft of something, if you want me to take a look at the banner and put together a revised version.
Yeah, it's attached to the agenda
Mhm. Yeah.
that I sent out. Sure. So that critique is welcome at this point, because I think if we're going to have it ready for September, especially the survey one, I'm not sure, unless we're in the parade, we want to have a banner that just says Conservation Advisory Council, keeping Lansing beautiful. Although, maybe that would be enough for the table. I think probably need to decide that tonight, because regardless of what we do for the carnival, we're going to need some kind of banner, I think.
Sure.
I think it probably is sufficient, because people are going to be going for like pretty low input sound bites. And I think just getting it out there that there is a group that's working on keeping Lansing beautiful is probably enough. But if we have the funds to print another something on vinyl, I would suggest putting those resources towards the billboard that hopefully Ted Lux will be able to put up, and do that as the plywood size, not the long narrow size, 4x8 versus 3x whatever the dimensions were going to be.
Yeah, I would almost recommend keeping it somewhat generic so that the lifespan of the banner goes beyond this planning process, and you could use it for all sorts of events moving forward.
Great, that sounds good to me. Other thoughts on that while we're talking about it? I see John, you're in the chat here.
So what we would put up at Ted Lux's place, wouldn't we include something about the survey?
That would be great if we could have a survey specific.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to, Tom.
Okay. I don't think Ted would have any problem with us putting something up there, especially if we did it. And I'm willing to put it up.
Yeah, I guess the thing to think about though is that if people are flying by there at 55 miles an hour, they're not going to get the URL.
No.
Yeah, so it needs
Just
to be punchy. It needs to be punchy enough to like bounce them to a website or whatever. It's a stepwise process, and it's a little complicated when you're talking about a next step rather than just go vote.
Yeah,
So-
I will actually take a look at, I did a project on Route 13 that we actually used like one of the DPW variable messaging boards. We just put it up on the roadway, and we got a great turnout on the survey just from having that. So let me take a look at what kind of messaging we used for that. because obviously people were going pretty fast on that roadway as well.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And then Katie, you caught the chat comment from John Fleming, right? About landowners.
Yep.
And their concerns. Yeah. And I captured that in my notes too. Thanks, John Fleming.
Yeah, so we can incorporate those concerns into those kind of talking point FAQ type bullet points that we'll send out.
And also good point, Robin, about the YMCA. That's great. Maybe, we can create, I don't think a budget is an issue and we can easily pay for 2 posters. CJ's already approved it. So these things are not that expensive. They're less than $100 each. And so we'll just have to figure out ahead of time exactly if it's going to be in the parade, it'll be one size. But I'm just judging from this conversation, I'm not sure we have 2 people yet who can parade it around, so to speak. But maybe, if the town can do that, we'll have a banner for the parade, and we could also do some type of other poster that could be used elsewhere. So Robin. Oh, okay. Gotcha. Flyer for the YMCA. All right, we're on the same page now.
Okay, yeah, so I will work on drafting that flyer. That being said, we need to get the survey pinned down and formalized before we do that, obviously. So let me, in the interest of time, move forward and just show you the draft survey questions that we've pulled together at this point. This is very much in draft format. And John and I wanted to keep it pretty concise so that it's not that, a huge ask of someone to partake in this survey. So there's I think there's about 10 content specific questions and then 5 demographic, socioeconomic questions at the end that are, all of the questions are optional, but the idea is that we get the content that we really want at the upfront. And then if people are so willing, they can help identify themselves through demographics and kind of get a sense of who we're hearing from and what the different opinions are and how they vary across the different types of residents in Lansing. So this is the intro paragraph that we are planning on having at the beginning of the survey, which just basically just outlines why the survey is being done, why the planning process is being undertaken, and just some of the logistics of it. So this is pretty generic language. And I'm actually just going to skip ahead for the sake of time. But again, I will send this out right after this meeting, and please feel free to mark up this language and edit it as you see fit.
Yeah, I know you're trying to stay in the interest of time, but I'm concerned about that second paragraph because I think that conservation is of utmost importance to the town is what maybe one of the outcomes of this is going to be. But have you found that stating that up front, in whose opinion?
Sure. This, I will be honest, this mostly comes from language that came in the RFP.
Mm-hmm.
But point well taken. And yeah, we can kind of tone down that language.
Well, I believe in it, but I also could see how it could be triggering.
Sure. Yeah.
And as we're doing this, Katie, are we aiming for an 8th grade reading level in general?
Yeah, that seems
Okay.
probably a good target.
That'll just inform, I think that'll inform our comments because, the vocabulary is pretty high on this, and we might want to consider just simplification of some of the longer words and
Sure.
just to keep it grabbing people of all ages, because I would assume we would want high schoolers, middle schoolers, and everybody up to 99 to be taking this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just taking notes. Any other thoughts on this? I know it's a quick read.
Attractive layout. I like it. Oh, Robin asks, are you surveying children?
As far as I know, I mean, we don't age restrict our community surveys. And yeah, it's not, tied to any sort of academic or rigorous research. So, as far as I know, yes, but I can double check on that to make sure that we are. But then,
I'd be very surprised if parental consent wasn't required, but maybe that's just because my background, you have to jump through all these hoops to
sure, yeah.
talk to children or survey them or work with them in any way.
Yeah, it's funny that question has never come up. I mean, I have to be honest, I really, I don't think we've often gotten a lot of youth survey takers. We have done youth workshops for planning processes, but I think it's a little bit of a different beast than a full-on academic research project.
Yeah, I don't know the answer. I just thought it was worth bringing up.
Yeah, no, I will actually look into that. Okay, so the first question is very generic, just trying to get a sense of people's values as far as how they feel about open space, and how important it is to them in terms of how they view their community. So this is just a really broad question, very important to very unimportant.
Are you positive that those are two things that can be lumped? Town's character and quality of life, or does that have to be two separate questions?
I mean, often in our planning processes, we do lump them together. They're very much tied together, but if there's one of those that you think is more important to ask about and you don't want to use both of those, we could certainly just speak directly to character or speak directly to quality of life.
Here, I wonder if it's fruitful to phrase this as how important do you think open space is to our town's character? Because I guess when I read this, I think, oh, well, I don't have the data to answer this question. But if you ask me my opinion,
Sure.
that I would feel qualified to answer this.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
I just think, I mean, for me, it's kind of a flag to have complex questions like that, and I would tend to want to split it into two.
So would you lean towards different wording, mixing one or the other?
Nope, just two separate questions. How important is open space? How important to you is open space for the town character, and then a second question for your quality of life?
Okay, yeah, I mean, we could certainly consider that. I think there's a concern about, we want to keep this relatively concise. And, some people might see that as a really redundant question, but I think I would lean towards just targeting one or the other rather than creating two separate questions out of that.
I would vote for quality of life if you
I
were
would
gonna limit one of
Yeah.
them.
I would also.
Yeah, me too.
I thought, Karen, you were going to say split out farmland, forests, and scenic views. And there's some justification for that.
Yes, that too.
Sure, yeah. And I think
Yes.
hopefully some of our further questions start to speak to that in terms of what different types of open space people are prioritizing.
That brings up, the thing that concerned me about that parenthetical part is, what about Cayuga Lake and waterways? I mean, Cayuga Lake is a huge part of the character of the
Yep.
community. It affects land values, along the shoreline at least, in a dramatic way. There's an issue of harmful algal blooms for Cayuga Lake, all kinds of things. So I don't know, could say, just put I would want to just say the lake. I guess if you said waterways,
waterways or water
maybe that would capture
resources.
the lake as well. Yeah, I don't know. But I'd like to see something in there for water, water, lake, waterways, and or the lake. I don't know.
Okay. And Karen, to your point, I think, we only have 10 questions right now that are content related. So if it turns out that we don't add any other questions, I have a feeling that we might add more questions as we move forward with the survey. But, if we add one more, I don't think it's super detrimental. I just don't want to make it, 20, 30 questions. I think part of this also, we talked about being able to fit this on a 8.5 by 11 front and back, so that we maybe could do a potential mailer down the road before the public meeting. But we can kind of see how this all plays out as we go through these.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you get it really different opinions and really different attitudes, whether you're talking about town character or you're talking about quality of life, because, town character to me says aesthetics, and quality of life feels to me more like health and well-being, and they're quite separate.
Okay.
I mean, town's character could include things like Rogues Harbor, for example, not open space.
Okay. Okay, any other thoughts on the first question? Okay, I will move forward. So the next question that we put together, well, actually, these are two questions on one slide. And these are questions that we often use at like a pop-up over a public workshop as well. But what is one word or phrase that you would use to describe open space in Lansing today? And what is one word or phrase you'd use to describe your vision for open space in Lansing in the future? And I will be honest, most of the time we get much more than one word or phrase, but I think it's good feedback regardless.
I really like the layout of this and the way you've used color to differentiate those questions. I think it's phrased very clearly and laid out very clearly.
Thanks. Any other thoughts? Are these two open-ended, generic?
I like
I'm
them.
still trying to figure out what I would put in here.
Yeah, yeah, me too.
Threatened.
Okay, so I'll take those as good. So this is where we kind of get into like the specifics of what people prioritize in terms of open space. So this is a ranking question. So asking people to rank most important to least important in terms of conservation efforts. And, I'm sure that there are other categories that we've missed out on. So if there are other specific things that you want to include on this list, please let us know. And I will say that we tried to, given that you have a parks master plan that's relatively new, we tried to steer away from like programmatic aspects and just try to focus on the actual open spaces themselves. But that's not to say that we couldn't talk more about like recreational programming and that type of thing.
And you're not
In terms
distinguishing
of the-
between
Oh,
public
go
and
ahead, Karen.
private here.
Sorry?
You're not distinguishing between public and private.
That's a good point, actually.
I'm not sure what the answer would be to that, like whether that matters, but it's, it's interesting when you talk, I mean, recreational spaces could be, Bell Station Forest Preserve, because it's considered public and recreational, or does that mean ball fields?
Right. So part of me thinks maybe we Because you're right, like a hiking, a hiking area could be considered a recreational space. But it also could be considered a woodlands or forest or, a meadow. Part of me leans towards just nixing recreational spaces altogether and just focus on what's actually on the land there.
Yep.
But to your point about private and public, maybe that's worth an additional question. A separate question about, are you interested in?
I'm gonna mess up your 10 count.
That's okay.
But no, I agree, because I think what we're talking about is even though it says open space, I think that we really are implying conservation in that.
Okay.
So somebody filling this out would rank these from 1 to 10. Is that the idea?
Yeah. Yep.
I'm just thinking in terms of the flow of your survey, the screen that you just showed, which I think was question 3, it seems like a very nice opening question, or a question that could be pretty close to the top of the survey to get people engaged. It's easy to think about this word or this phrase. They can kind of pop it off. This one's requiring more thought, but this seems very closely linked to, I think it's maybe question 2. I'm just wondering about putting those two together, given that there's probably a flow of you're kind of asking the respondent to think about certain things in certain ways. That's more of a comment about the ordering of your questions in here. I think also it might be worth tweaking how these are listed, given some of them jump out at you because they're in orange. And then it's not alphabetized, and I know you don't want to prioritize it right now, but it comes to mind that maybe we would even want to, have 2 columns or just something to encourage them to be able to sort of move it around. As a survey taker, I'm trying to think, okay, how am I going to actually rank this if I'm taking it on paper? Am I going to put a number next to each one? And can you guide me through that process?
Yeah, I will say that this is just my slides. The survey won't actually look like this, unfortunately.
Okay.
But to your point, I mean, I think it makes sense to just alphabetize them so that there's not like we're trying to suggest some sort of ranking at the beginning. But yeah, I think to your point about like the paper survey, it would just be like ranking, putting numbers 1 through however many on this list.
You wouldn't want to have them rate them, like give each one a number from 1 to 5. Because I think ranking, like for me, I like, what do I not care at all about? And, I wouldn't want to give anything a 10 because I sort of care about all these things. So if I was able to say, well, this one is, a 5, it's really maybe 3 of these are 5s, really the top of my list. And a couple of them are 4s and 3s. And that would make me a little more comfortable answering this than going 1 to 10. And it also could take me longer.
Yeah, that's a good point. I actually am not sure.
They rate from 1 to 5, the following open space features. 1, least important, 5, most. You have to be very clear about the rating scale, of course.
Right. I will have to look into what our online survey platform, if they allow for like tied rankings, because that might help.
Right. You'd have to actually get the, you'd have to have, of all the surveys, you'd have to average what the score was for water resources. So if you had, let's say you just had 10 people answer the survey and 10 answered 5 and 10 answered 3 for water resources, then the average would be 4 for that one. So you'd have to act, maybe you can't do that. It's too, might be too hard. Just, with the tool you've got, maybe that wouldn't work.
I will look into it though, because I mean, I get to your point, like for many people, none of these are going to be, forget it. I don't care about this, so
Yeah, you could also say
If
from
we
maybe
could do
from,
tide ranking, I think that would
if,
help.
if you can't do that, maybe you could have a little, fewer to have to rank, and then also say from most to less important or something like that. Just make it a little less dramatic.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, and to your point, I do think we want to keep this list relatively concise, because otherwise it does become kind of a complicated exercise of,
Yeah, people could really
ranking.
wrestle. People who really care about this stuff might really wrestle with that. Then they end up spending
Mhm.
10 minutes on this one question.
I think I put a comment in the chat, but I think it would be helpful to, just for me, because I've missed the last two meetings, but to reiterate what the primary goal of this is, to identify areas in Lansing that we want to preserve. Right, that's the goal. I don't really see wildlife habitat as a land cover type. The rest of these look like land cover types, and wildlife habitat is wherever the wildlife is. It could be
Sure.
wetland, it could be a grassland, it could be a floodplain. So that one to me sticks out as the one that doesn't quite fit. But I think it's more of a values question, like, are people willing to have land in Lansing set aside just for wildlife that they can't access or hike on or look at? To me, I can kind of interpret it as being more of a values question. So I'm not entirely sure how that one, like for me, I would slide that right up to number one because I'm a wildlife biologist.
Sure, and I think that's kind
That's
of
my priority.
the point that we were getting at is, do you really care mostly about habitat preservation? Or, for instance, like floodplains and wetlands typically overlap in a lot of situations too. Are you worried about flooding issues in the town? And that's why, floodplains are the most important for you to protect. But to your point, I think if we want to go strictly land cover type, that might be like a really clear cut way of defining this.
I think for me, what I realized as I started reading these questions and trying to figure out how I would answer this one specifically, that I thought, I wonder if this question is really about my values as opposed to what land cover types the town should
I would say
preserve.
yes, that was the original intent, is values.
Because you could say the same thing about scenic views, right? These are not mutually exclusive
Yeah,
categories. So I think as long as we accept that premise, that I am okay with this, particularly because for me, that would be number one. I would have put that one at the top. And then I started looking at the others thinking, well, forest or wildlife habitat.
yeah,
Grasslands it's all wildlife habitat.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Except maybe a scenic view, that's just sort of its own value, but kind of seems to me like two of them are values, or three of them if you don't get rid of recreational space. Some of them are values and some of them are just simply land cover type. So as long as we're all clear on that and that suits the purpose, that's okay with me.
So
Yeah.
John is saying, I like David's idea because they're very hard to put in any of 9s or 10s. I tend to agree. I think trying to say which one's more important than the next one is pretty difficult. Whereas if you could rank them 1 to 5, that would be a little easier.
So in the instance that I can't do, like we couldn't do tide rankings and list multiple as a 2, or maybe, someone wants to put all of them as 1, they're all equally important to me. Would you rather choose the top 5 that are most important to you? And then you can only select 5 out of this list?
Can we just go back to what do you want to gain from this question?
I think to Robin's point, it's values. Like what are the most crucial, or what are the most important in the eyes of your residents and stakeholders lands to be preserved? And that's not, obviously not to say that we will neglect any of these based on the survey results, but just to get a sense of, and also to get people thinking about, okay, what type of open space is in my community and what do I enjoy having in my community?
In some ways, that's the most useful thing out of this question, I think, is it makes people, oh, here's what they're talking about, open space. Now it just kind of really opens their minds to what we mean by what open space could mean. So I kind of, from that standpoint, the question's kind of valuable just from that. But obviously, if you just have different, different groups would, have very different. It depends on who you survey, I guess, and how broad your survey and how even-handed the survey is to get into the hands of everybody uniformly.
Well, ideally, it'll be incredibly uniformly. We'll have a 98% response rate.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I'm kind of curious as to what Todd is thinking about this survey question, because Todd, you tend to be penetrating in your comments about these types of questions, but according to my memory, are you still on?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I guess I'm having some trouble processing what the restrictions are on making these 1 to 5 Likert scores. So I didn't quite follow. Katie, can you clarify what the problem there is?
The problem regarding,
Just making these, everybody rates these 1 to 5 from like what they think is the most really important and not important. Following Dave's idea.
Yeah, I think
Sure.
you said like your tool can't then collect the average from the surveys, correct?
no, I just think, from a purely like a program standpoint, I'm not sure if there's a capability of ranking them the same rank, several of them the same rank, right? Because in our mind,
They'd be scored the same
you're
rating.
giving each of these a score. You're not letting, it gets ranked from top to bottom. I'm just not sure if you could say these two, wetlands and scenic views are both 2 in my mind.
So this is a software problem?
We use a platform through Esri, Survey 123, and I'm just not sure if they have that capability or not, but I can certainly look into it.
No, but you could have, like, you could see maybe, 4 of these all, rank 5, and another couple rank 4, and another couple rank
Right.
2 and 3. That just gives us some idea of, well, virtually everybody thinks those that got a 5 thinks that they're quite important. And all those that, the ones that got a 2 or a 3 are, on average, less important. I mean, it was, a mixed result for those.
I'm thinking if I answered this thing and you gave me a Likert scale and I could choose on each one, is it a 1 for low or a high for 5? I'd probably put 5 on all these things. And I don't know if that's a bad answer in terms of a survey, because it shows how passionate I am about protecting all of these things, and as opposed to apathy or or another opinion of like, oh well actually we're doing a great job with our floodplains or this or that. So
yeah, I mean, actually, if they all ranked very high, it would indicate that the community is quite interested in all of them.
Yeah,
so that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, if probably, I guess what might rank lowest are things that people aren't that familiar with, maybe wetlands or something, floodlands, floodplains.
No, I would agree with that. And
but that doesn't mean, in terms of open space, that would have much to, should really be affecting the town in planning, because what we know is it's not just where you can, what gives you a sense of pleasure looking at or being there, but it's also what's important to, like, flood control in that case.
Sure. Let me get back to you all on the tide ranking situation. I mean, obviously it's very easy to do on an analog, like on a paper survey, but
I Like Qualtrics, I think, can do that sort of thing, but that's a software I'm familiar with.
Yeah, so I'm reading Robin's comments as they come in, and I almost feel like we need to do a dummy run with this because I mean, Robin brought up a good point. Wildlife habitat for me is streams because I like to fish, you know, and for other people it's going to be birds. I mean, so how people interpret these designations is that may be the thing we actually get out of this survey, and it's not what we wanted to get out of the survey. Is just when people think of a wetland, what do they think of? Well, John thinks like this is something I need to drain so I can raise corn, and so that's something I don't really want. But you know, so I'm just a little concerned that I think we've tried to be generic here, but when you say like meadow, that sounds great, right? Maybe grassland doesn't even seem like something that's in it. Anyways, I'm just concerned we're gonna end up getting what people's impressions of these designations are. And I do think the wildlife, well, and maybe we don't care. Maybe that's fine. Maybe that's something that still is important.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing for sure. And I think it's generally what we're trying to get is a sense of community values out of this. So
Yeah. What if we change this to, you know, really something, well, let me just, off the top of my head, you know, all of the following are, you know, examples of important open spaces in our potentially important or something like that. Which of these are you most familiar with, or which of these are more important to you, or something? And what 5 are most important to you, something like that. But we kind of, you know, couch it in, you know, all of these. I think part of this, the value of this question is it does open people's eyes to what an open space index might encompass. And if, you know, and then so I'd like to kind of have spelling all those out, even though they're kind of apples and oranges in some ways. But then maybe having them rank the top, the 5, as someone had said earlier, maybe having just selecting the 5 that are most important to them or something like that.
Sure.
That's another idea anyway.
yeah,
Well, Dave, I really like that idea of having this be something in which we're trying to,
So these are all-
we're getting information back, but we're also going to be able to perhaps get people thinking about what we're doing here. And maybe
Yeah,
that's even
it's
more important
educational.
than our data.
Yeah. All of these are examples of what we might consider an open space index. Which of these, what 3 of these, or what 5 of these are, you know, are most important to you, I guess.
Yeah, and I don't doubt the educational value of a survey to raise awareness, but you know, John now in the chat is now articulating kind of where I'm coming from with my questioning is, you know, how are the results of this question going to impact how we move forward on the plan? And if they are going to impact it, I do think we need to word it quite carefully.
Karen,
Yeah,
one way
I'm
that I
thinking it
was-
might not influence, I mean, the plan's gonna be, you know, it would, like I said, example is floodplains, you know, that's not something people will really be, a lot of people would really be valuing, but that's because they're not really considering just the issue of flood control and that kind of stuff, which
Or
would come
climate
into the,
I think
Huh?
one of the ways that the results of this sort of a ranking system might influence the plan moving forward is that it provides a way to justify and substantiate a project that we might take on, like if it's you know, like a stream corridor protection project, we could say in the survey that was done as part of the open space plan, 95% of the people surveyed ranked stream corridors as one of their, you know, top preferences for open space protection in the town. So it's a way of capturing
yeah.
sentiment in a way that can work for and backstop us as a a driving force for an open space protection project. So it's not just the half dozen or so of us on the committee, but it's really representing what the preferences of the larger community are quantitatively.
No, I would agree with that.
Well, this is a very interesting question. I think it's really, I really don't want to just, I don't want to just toss out this question.
I was gonna say, we
No.
always have the option of just nixing the question
No, I
altogether.
don't think we
No,
should do that. I think
no.
it's very valuable and I can see it really
Yeah.
being quite valuable.
But I
I
do
don't know
think
how we get there. I don't think we may not have the time to figure it out, maybe we should do it offline or something a little bit.
so. It would be good to make a plan of how it can be refined. And I think maybe a couple of us need to form a little group with you, Katie. It can look at this. You already have me and Karen as liaisons, but if another couple CAC members were willing to join on, or if you could all be responsive to another draft, that would be super.
Mhm.
Yeah, either way works for us. I will just say in the interest of time, given that we've got just a few weeks before we want to launch this survey, if we want to do like another meeting with a smaller group of people, happy to do that. Just if we could do that in the next week or so, that would be great.
Mhm.
Okay, why don't we plan on doing that then?
Okay.
And then move on to the next question.
Okay.
The survey's taken a long
I
time.
was gonna say, hopefully this one is not as thought provoking. It's definitely gonna be a similar situation. So in this one, we actually did
Okay,
say,
yeah,
okay,
top three.
choose only 3 out of this.
Oh, okay, yeah, so maybe more
And-
along these lines, the previous one would be, yeah. Anyway, okay.
Again, there are certainly other benefits that maybe we've missed that you want to include in this list. But the idea is, yeah, getting at, why open space preservation or conservation is important to the community.
Yeah, this is another good one, a good educational thing too, yeah.
Any thoughts?
Just probably the phrasing of the question, but we can tweak that.
I think aesthetics is missing.
Maybe quality of life was already covered in the question 1. Just trying to think if we add one, what could we subtract?
Sure, yeah. I think it's a little bit of a different,
Yeah, it's a different way of looking
Yeah.
at it. Equity is kind of, will be a stretch for some, but for some people, it's a word they'll really quickly latch onto and be interested in, I think. So I don't know.
Yeah, as with the last question, I'm almost wondering what people think when they answer these things. Does everybody think community health is the same thing? And we have no way of knowing what they meant, what they thought it meant when they said, "Oh yeah, that's community health." Does that mean the same thing as economic, development? Is a healthy community one that has lots of taxes coming in?
sure.
So I guess not that I want to nix anything or change anything, but I know when we go through this at the end, we're going to be wondering what were people thinking when they answered
Yeah.
this way.
I mean, do you think the term public health is a little bit more
Yes.
transparent?
Maybe, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. That's helpful.
John has a question, community health versus quality of life, question mark, very similar.
Sure. I think if we rephrase to public health, it's more in the realm of, physical activity, mental well-being, that type of thing. Although I could certainly see how mental well-being and quality of life also overlap.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think public health has got a really different meaning for me because maybe because of the work that I do, but that's really, to me, that's impact of environment on health,
Mhm.
not happiness, not a happiness quotient.
I think that the problem you're running into is it's almost like writing statutes. If you don't provide a dictionary that defines every term in the statute, then you're left open to interpretation. And we just don't have room
Yeah,
here to
right.
provide a dictionary for every term
Right.
that you're going to use in here. So you're going to have to go off and make some assumptions of what people were thinking, or else you've got a 100-page document because you had to put a dictionary in
You had
front.
to put an addendum with all the definitions.
Right.
Yes.
It's a daunting task, but that's the problem we face in so many things is I can say a word and it means something to me, but to you, it's something different. And simply listing here, you're going to get 100 different opinions as to what one of those words might mean.
Sure.
Yep, yeah, I think you're right. We just have to live with that. I keep putting
Yeah,
myself.
I think it's just a little sticky. It's just a little messy, but the
Yeah.
idea is to get like general community values, and also, part of the community survey benefit is community buy-in and feeling like they're a part of this process.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. Yeah, and some of this could be interesting. Like if we had, a large fraction focusing on economic development, that's useful to know. Or climate resiliency. I just don't. It's hard to predict some of those things. So.
Yeah. Yeah, humans are messy.
Are
Maybe
we,
the one before we were wrestling with a little more in this, a little bit done, a little bit more like this one might be the answer to that one, possibly. But
Carrie, you're going to say something?
I was just going to say the extent of the demographics that we're going to collect is basically where do you live? Or is that not going to be correlated to this survey?
We will get to that.
Okay. All right, great.
And I actually am curious on all of your input about what type of questions we want to ask. Okay, I'm going to move forward, but again,
Going.
not set in stone. This is a very broad question. I think in conversations with Carrie and Karen, we wanted to steer away from, okay, what does this mean in terms of tax implications? But just to get a very broad sense of people's opinion about whether this is a worthwhile investment. And again, fully okay with nixing this question if we're not comfortable with it. But should the town proactively pursue policies and other measures to conserve open space in the town of Lansing? Yes, no opinion, or no?
I think
No, I
that's
like
a good
this question.
question. Yeah, that's a good question.
Okay.
I
I
like
think it cuts through a lot of the noise and gets right to the, like,
Yeah.
if people hate this, then we have to rethink how we approach the whole issue.
yeah.
I like it. I think just tweak your question to make sure you got the right agreement up there. You'll just reread it and you'll see, take out and add S to measures. But other than that,
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
like a radical thing.
Okay, great. Any other thoughts?
Yes, the proactively, is that, we take that out or leave it in? Does that change the question?
I don't think you need it.
Probably. Yeah, we can
Make
get
sure
rid of
it's good.
proactively.
Yeah.
Okay, question 7.
Should
Oh.
that question come up earlier? Like at the
It
beginning?
could, because it's very generic, we're not really drilling into detail.
Yeah.
Okay, does policy sound like regulations? Or does policy, do people like keep that? That could be incentives, it could be a whole bunch of
Yeah.
things. I'm just trying to think what. Joe.
I think it's
Schmo would think.
purposely generic, whether that's regulations, incentives,
Okay,
but we could be more
Okay.
specific if we wanted to.
Should the town Could you just pare it right down? Should the
Sure.
town conserve open space in the town of Lansing?
Yeah,
Yeah, we could do that.
yeah, take out policies and other, just pursue measures.
Yeah, you could make it
I
super
think-
short.
The only,
Open space in the town, question mark.
Yeah. Okay.
Hang on, John Scott. Yeah, I agree. This question would be very interesting if it's tied to people's location.
Yeah, Katie's gonna tell us about how she's getting that information.
Yeah, all right. Let you do your job, Katie. Here you go.
okay, so now we're getting to more of the generic questions. This is just open-ended. If you've got other thoughts, feelings about open space conservation, please let us know. So this will just be like an open text box. This was an idea that we had
Yeah,
partially
That's good.
for just using photos for our plan, having
Mhm.
user submitted
Mhm.
photos, but also to get a sense of, where are people valuing their, where are they spending time? Where, what open spaces mean something to people.
So
I like
if-
this.
Yeah, if people don't have a photo though, just to describe a particular location, I don't think people may want to run out and take a particular
Sure.
photo.
Yeah, and I think
But they may have a place that they really like and think it's worth protecting.
Is the purpose of this question for them to nominate a place that they think should be preserved to the town? Because that's not really,
no,
how I
it's mostly
interpret it.
just to get photos, honestly.
but- But I think
Well,
this gives us a lot of
but I think-
information.
I think it's important because maybe people do have particular places that they think are definitely worth protecting, and we don't. They may be different than what we think.
I agree. And to that point, I think this kind of gets at that, is in addition to having some cool, user generated photos, but then also the next question, not to jump ahead,
Oh, okay.
this will be the map based component. So we're going to ask people to pinpoint on a map
Okay.
where they think it's most important to conserve
Yeah.
open space. That being said, this leans itself to the online version. So my idea is that on the paper version, we just have people basically describe it, give an address if they can, or
Mhm.
basically give a general description of where it is. And then we can go ahead and digitize that into our map-based platform.
Well, you could also have a little cartoon of the town also.
Yeah, we could do that. I mean, ideally, if we had a ton of space, I would love to just do like a whole page map, and then people could just pinpoint it. But I think we might be a little space restricted if we're trying to keep it to one, front and back. So this is kind of the tricky thing of doing both hard copy and line surveys.
Are you putting some limit, like pick up to 3 locations or something like that, or?
I mean, I think if people want to go in and populate
Okay.
a map with 25
Oh, okay,
to 100 spots, that's fine.
okay.
So you would basically be able to translate a dot on a paper map or a description to some type of electronic map.
Yeah, I mean, depending on how accurate the description is, right? But I
I mean,
think,
it sounds like quite the task, but also very valuable.
yeah, and I think my hunch is that we will get more online surveys than we will get paper surveys. But I think it's worthwhile regardless. When I just saw your comment about the photos, and I think that's a fair observation. Open to suggestions on how to reword this.
Yeah, Robin makes a good point. I think what I would like to get out of this is when people are thinking of open space, a photo will help me see whether they are a hunter or a boater, or what they're, you know,
Sure.
kind of what they were coming, whole survey, how they were coming at the whole survey. But Robin's right, we want to make it, want to make clear. Maybe it's something like to get a better idea of what you think of open space, provide a photo or two of what you're thinking of. But yeah, we want to make it clear that we're not taking nominations to, because that would just
Yeah.
keep people angry.
Wait, now I'm confused. Are we just getting a sense of their values, or are we actually finding little hidden gems that could be in the future conserved?
I don't think there's any reason that we need to not use the photos as data, right? Like if someone gives us a photo and it's tied to a location, I'm going to take that in the same way that I take a point on a map. This is important to me. This is where it is.
It could be
But
both.
if
Gary.
someone just really likes taking photos of open space in Lansing, and if they feel inclined to put them in there, that's fine too, as far as I'm concerned.
So you're good, Katie, with a backyard pond or a sweeping view of Cuba Lake?
Personally, yes, but I could, if
All right.
people feel
No, that's-
differently, we can certainly rework this question.
No, I think it's just interesting talking about it to kind of hone in on, okay, what do we want from this question?
Well, this question and the next question are very related. To me, they are.
They are. And we could certainly nix one versus the other. We just thought it might be a nice, like, community-based thing to ask for photos, and then we can, you know, credit those people in the plan when it comes out and say, you know, so and so
that's kinda nice.
contributed to this plan and they took this photo of such and such place. And
I wonder whether you need to also include a disclaimer that says your photos will not be used
make,
without permission.
sure, yeah.
But that also, I don't know. This is anonymous, right? Unless they decide they want to put in their name for the drawing at the end.
Correct.
Something to think about.
That is a good point. I mean, we could either
Or-
put a disclaimer and say any photos that you submit may be used.
Yeah, I think that, Katie, that the photo will be used, and if you want to be credited, make sure you provide your
Put
name.
it in the comments.
Yeah.
Robin, I think it's a good point that digging around for photos could take you out of the survey and distract.
Sure. And
Um,
to your point, this is the last, the map-based question will be in a separate I mean, it'll be linked to it, but it will be in a separate platform just by nature. So this is kind of the last question, content related question. The demographic questions come later, but we could put this at the end, even after those demographic questions if we wanted to.
I'm just observing that to me, this seems like the least important data point that you might be trying to collect, especially if there's a mapping exercise coming up that we haven't
Sure.
seen yet.
Yeah, no, it's mostly,
This-
I mean, I'm gonna be honest, this is mostly to be like, this is supposed to be fun. Like, this is supposed
If
to
this
be.
is a fun way for people to just share a photo, I think you should have it as the very last question.
Okay.
By the way, submit a photo of your favorite open space in Lansing, because otherwise, like, if I'm doing this survey on my phone, I'm gonna be flipping around, I might lose the survey entirely trying to get the photos or trying to find them. And it feels very much like this is just an attempt to get photos and not really like a data point that you can analyze unless you're embedding the metadata from the photo, like the latitude and longitude. I don't know how you would analyze this or really how it's going to be helpful, other than it sounds like just a fun way to visualize what they're doing, but not really, to me, as an analyst, I don't know how I would analyze this. And I solicit photos from people all the time for data tied to bird nests, and I've worked with
Sure,
photo data,
yeah.
and it's just,
Yep.
it's hard to analyze it, and I don't know, you know, what you're gonna do with this other than just have nice photos for the open space index. If to me, it feels really like strange here. I don't know if I'm the only one that feels that
I mean,
way.
we certainly can get rid of it.
Well, can we have a button that says, click here to complete the survey. And they click it and the screen says, thank you so much. If you would like, because then we get the survey. Then they're pretty much done. But if you would like to submit a photo,
Oh,
then
yeah, that's a good idea.
We could do that. Yep.
I guess related to that also is the question is if the next question takes them to a separate platform to do the map, then is there something on that mapping platform that's going to bring them back into the demographics section, or is that, are we gonna?
No,
lose
that's a
them?
good point. And actually, I think we'll have to put the demographic questions before the map-based platform. This is like just the restrictions of the platform in which we're using. We can do a map-based question within the survey itself without having to pull people out of the survey platform. The only limitation of that is that they are allowed to put one dot down. So if we're okay with people just voting for one space, we could certainly do that. But I would argue that it would be better that we have the full capabilities of the map-based survey, which allows people to put a comment, categorize what they're doing, add a photo if they want to, add a video if they want to, and put multiple points in. So I think in that way, there's value in doing this separate map-based platform. I know it's a little clunky in the way that it works out. But that's just kind of the nature of the platform that we use. And then I think the other concern is, if we ask people to click on the map-based survey, and then we have a separate survey as well for asking for photos, that might get a little cumbersome. But that's just my initial
you can,
thoughts.
if you just want photos, you can always like bump them to Facebook or social media and say upload, click here to go to Facebook and post your photos in our community page or something. I'm
Mhm.
still not clear on what the purpose of the photos are that they need to do this in this survey versus Facebook or some on the town's website or somewhere else. I'm not sure what you're hoping to
I think
get from
we're
that.
just trying to get a sense of where people, what the important spaces of people are. And you're right, we could certainly do that within the map-based platform. But also just like a sense of ownership with this plan and a sense of like, I'm contributing to this. I have local knowledge. I am, a citizen scientist in that regard.
Mhm.
And I will, be contributing to this plan in a real way.
Yeah.
It's
So
not crucial. It's certainly not crucial. I'm not saying that.
I think it could be. I think if they
crucial
said,
data point.
this is the, I'm going to go right now and take a picture because I don't want this meadow to get developed. There's could be a sense of urgency where they would want to submit that, but it's just
Mhm.
not clear to me now if that's what you're asking them to do. Because if I was taking this survey, I might go down and photograph, something that I know is important to me, or dig through my photos and find it. If I don't think that's what you're doing, I'm just going to skip this question. I guess to me, it could be really useful,
think-
but you've tried to explain it. I know I still don't understand how this is.
I
gonna
mean,
be
we are super open, and so, I mean, I think
Yeah.
in the way that we've worded this, we said, yeah, like if there's a particular space that is important to you and you would like to provide a photo, please do so.
So on the other end of that, us as the committee, I guess, what are we doing with those photos? Are we saying, we get a photo of Salt Point, great, it's already preserved. Or we get a photo that somebody intends to nominate and we don't know that because maybe they didn't put it in the caption. And I would think it would be interesting to hear people nominating spaces that we might not have thought about for conservation, but I don't know I'm not sure how that's being used here, or if that's even the purpose.
I mean, we will take all data from multiple facets. So
But you're
whether
not-
it comes in a photo, or if it comes in a point on a map, or it comes in a narrative format, it's all gonna get incorporated into this
Yeah,
planning
maybe I
process.
maybe I just need to test this survey on my phone and see if it's as
Sure.
distracting as I think it is.
Robin, I think the tricky thing in saying that it's a place that you want to nominate is the next question is for what? And in fact,
We
we
can't
don't-
make promises, really.
we can't make promises and we don't really even know for what. We don't even have all of our criteria fully set. So I think this idea of a place that's important to you kind of gets at the heart of the matter, and it involves the emotional side of conserving land. So I think there's value in the question, and just asking about what is important to you. The whole survey is essentially what's important to you, and this gives people an opportunity to show.
I thought I heard Katie say that the next question is them doing the same thing, but on a map, which is much more data rich than a photo.
Well, let's go to that.
Yeah, maybe I just need to see that and to
So
understand.
we
that.
don't have like the map-based question developed yet, but I can tell you it will be an aerial photo. You can switch out the base map. It will have a boundary of the town on it. Maybe any like important data. I mean, we don't want to overcomplicate this, but we could put wetlands, we can put existing parklands, we can put, different environmental features on that map. And then it'll just be place a point where you think it's important. You can put a little comment. You can put a description. You can add a photo if you'd like to. And that will help, gather some data on, where people think we should be focusing our efforts.
I think that is where I would choose to put my photo efforts as a person who might take the survey. I would understand that map, the purpose of that, I think.
Sure, yeah. No, I totally understand that.
I'm telling you what I think is important for conservation, and here it is, and here's my note, and here's a photo. So,
Mhm, mhm.
Actually, that's a good idea to link all three, if that will still be what is useful for you, Katie, in thinking about the feedback, because that's I think a very rich batch of data.
No, and in a lot of projects that we've done, these map-based surveys have been really useful, and then you can generate heat maps and all sorts of, different data. You can also have a function of vote yes. If someone else has already nominated your favorite particular spot, you can just click on the heart button, and then, you can get different priority rankings based on how many people have said, yes, that's, I agree.
Is
To
this,
that point, sorry, Tom, go ahead.
I was just wondering, is this the last question?
It's the last open space related question, and then we get into the demographics.
Because we're running out of time here.
Okay, yeah, it's 8 o'clock. To that point, and given that it's 8 o'clock, do we want to go through the demographic questions? Do we want to create
Very
like a
quickly.
Sure.
How about very quickly?
Okay, so quickly, which of the following best describes you? You can check all that applies. This is pretty straightforward.
Mhm.
Study should be student. That's my bad. How long have you lived in the town of Lansing? Again, we can tweak these these year ranges if we need to. Age range. We will get back to Robin on the under age 18 situation.
Mhm.
How many people are in your household? That's just a standard question we typically ask. And then income range. That being said, we did not have a question about your address. I think again, all of these are optional, but it might be worth including.
And can these surveys be anonymous?
Yes. And then
And-
actually.
And
to that
people
end,
do not have to answer.
They don't have to
all
answer.
the- Yeah,
None of them are required. No.
okay. So do we want to include a address one?
Well, you mean actually an address or maybe not so quite so specific?
Yeah.
You don't want to,
I mean, for like countywide planning operation, we'll ask for a zip code or something like that. That might not be as relevant to, I don't know how many
Maybe
zip
could
codes
you-
you
could
have,
you-
but I assume it's one.
could you throw up a map of the Lansing jurisdiction and just have some somewhat arbitrary areas, some, like maybe and number them just 1 through 5 or something?
Just like, we could almost like break it out into quadrants.
Yeah, and or some of them might be more, you could even do it a little more jiggly and actually have some key farmland and the urban areas or something. But anyway, just have like 5, a choice of which of these 5 is best matches where you live or something like that. We know whether it was urban or farmland or something like that.
Couldn't
Maybe.
you just pull up a map and have them just put a pin? It doesn't have to give the actual address, but that way it's even more specific.
We could do that.
I think just having, 5 areas of Lansing probably will give you a good idea of where they're coming from.
Okay. Okay.
So when do we hope to have this thing all together?
Well, let's see, let's work backwards. So, I mean, even if we can get it live the day or two before the carnival, I think it's fine as long as we have something to present. So that gives us essentially 3 weeks.
So shall we have people comment on this committee within the next week, and then
That sounds great.
you can take it from there?
Yeah, if we could get comments back by the end of next week, then we can take the next week to refine it, put it into the program, send it out maybe one more time,
Okay,
and then we can have it live that week of the 19th.
okay,
So I just would push for a couple of point people who can work with you, Katie,
Sure.
the areas that are unclear or disputed in terms of the questions. So I personally would be willing to work with you, but I am not as adept a statistician as some of the people on this call, and I'm not as adept at these kinds of surveys. So if there are other people who want to be point people, that'd be super useful. And then we could actually have a Zoom call with you. And I could do
Yeah.
that.
Yep.
I can do that by the end of next week, as long as it's, Thursday or Friday.
Yeah, we could either do end of next week, or we could even do the beginning of the following week after we get the full comments from the committee. Whatever works best.
I'd be happy to jump on that. I mean, I've done, just in my academic career, I've done a bunch of survey research, so I think I'm maybe as qualified as
Great.
anyone.
Thanks, Karen.
Yeah.
okay. And I would just encourage everybody to send in comments.
Yes, please do.
Okay,
All right.
Great.
thank you, Katie.
Yes, and I will send a follow-up email after this meeting, just to follow back on some of the logistics of the carnival as well as the survey. So,
Great,
A lot.
thanks a
Katie.
lot.
Yeah.
Okay, now we are going to go into an executive session, so I'm going to stop the recording and we will continue.